the Mauryan and Gupta administration. Now we are going to discuss the Mughal administration and the British administration. I hope I am audible to you. So under the Mughal administration, we are going to learn how the administration was carried out and what was the legacy which is carried out till today in our present administration. So in the medieval period, Mughal Empire was one of the greatest empires to rule India for more than 3 centuries, which gave enough time and opportunities to plan, strengthen the administrative system. And that the credit goes to the Akbar, who succeeded in bringing the administration a certain standard of perfection. Akbar's system of administration continued for more than 200 years. And we'll see what are the features of the Mughal administration. The Mughal administration presented a combination of Perso-Arabic system in Indian setting. The Mughals carried out certain modifications in it. The light of foreign experience, the emperor was the head of the administration and the state. He was a lawmaker as well as a dispenser of justice, the commander-in-chief and fountainhead of all honors. He was the source of all authority. The Mughal emperor accepted 2 primary duties for themselves, that is Jahan Bani, protection of the state, and Jahangir, extension of the empire. So the main functions of the king or the emperor under the Mughal administration was for the protection of the people or the protection of the state or protection of the kingdom, you can say, or the other main function is the extension of the empire, means increasing his provincial territories. They attempted to create those conditions which were conducive to economic and cultural progress of their subjects. They devoted a lot of time to look after the affairs of the state. The Mughal administrative system was in the nature of military rule and affairs of the state. The Mughal administration was in the nature of military rule and was necessarily a centralized despotism. Akbar used to say tyranny is unlawful in everyone, especially in sovereign, who is guardian of the public. He also observed divine worship in monarchs, in their justice and good administration. So Mughals, particularly during the reign of Akbar, made considerable efforts for the effective governance organization, though in a considerably attenuated form in the later years, and you tell the English East India Company stepped into the shoes of Mughal emperors. And we'll see what is the role of the king under the Mughal administration. Mughal emperors considered themselves as gods, representatives on earth. They claimed to be the shadow of earth or visible god or wakil to god or Khalifa of a country. So all the powers vested in the hands of the Mughal emperor, and they themselves pretended them as the gods' representatives on the earth, and they claimed themselves as the shadow of earth or visible god or wakil to god. That is, he is like a lawyer to God between us and the god, and the Khalifa of a country. The king was fountain of all honors, source of administrative power, and the dispenser of supreme justice and chief legislator. The entire administrator machinery revolved around the king. The king was the final arbitrator in all aspects of administration. So Akbar started practices like Jaroka-i-Darshan and Tula dance. Though there was no legal limit to powers of the emperor, yet there were certain limitations. So the king has enormous powers in his hands, and it was a totally centralized administration. And the king took interest in the matters of administration and spent a number of hours in the administrative work of the empire. The emperor certainly gave due consideration to the advice given by his ministers. Mughal emperors, based on their despotism on the based their despotism on power and loyalty of the nobles. Administrative framework of the Council of Ministers. So the Mughals built up a strong administrative setup to rule their vast kingdom. The kingdom was assisted by four important officials. Each one of these used to head revenue and finance, that is Diwan or Wakil, army, Mir Bakshi, ecclesiastical, Bidul Sadar, factories and stores, Mir Saman. Okay, the main important officials who worked under the Mughal administration were the revenue and finance, who is called the Diwan or Wakil, and the in charge of army was Mir Bakshi, and the other was a Sadar, and the other was the head of factories and stores, that is Mir Saman. And these four officials used to advise the king and all important ministers. They were all of the same rank and status except Diwan, Wazir during the Akbar's time. Diwan is like a today's prime minister in the Mughal Empire, and it was not necessary for the Mughal emperor to consult his ministers on all occasions, and at times the Mughal emperor had no regular council of ministers. Even there is no resemblance between Mughals and present day council of ministers. So as we have said, the administration was a centralized one, and the council of ministers, the decisions were in the hands of the emperor, though he consulted the council of ministers, but the final decision was taken by the emperor. Wakil was like a regent of emperor's business in all matters, connected with royal household and responsible for the execution of all important policy matters. He was in charge of personal department and responsible for the promotion, degradation, and dismissal of employees. And then the next comes the Diwan or Wazir. The Diwan was the prime minister. He was also head of the revenue department and dealt all matters relating to revenue and decided cases connected with organization, assessment, and collection of land revenue. So how, like the prime minister, the Diwan is called the prime minister, and he is the head of the revenue department, and he deals with all the matters relating to the revenue and the decided cases connected with the organization, assessment, and collection of land revenue. The land revenue is the primary source of income to the empire, and this Diwan was responsible for all kinds of payments and authority to pass orders under the direction of the king. He was given power to inspect all the monetary transactions and payments made by the government, and also responsible to maintain all types of records pertaining to the administration. The rise in power of the Diwan started with the decline of the importance of the Wakil. Then next comes the important official under Mughal Empire was the Mir Bakshi. The Mir Bakshi was the head of the military department at the center, or you can say the commander in general in today's administration. He not only enjoyed the power over his department, but also influence extended beyond his own department. He kept all records of appointments, promotions, demotions, leave granted, advances made, and realized. He arranged for the payment of salaries in cash by Jagirs, that is the authority to collect a specialized amount of land revenue from a specified areas of land after Diwan had sent the appropriate orders to him. He was establishment officer who passed all the salary bills. On the battlefield, he acted as the chief military advisor to the emperor. So Mir Bakshi, or you can say the commander-in-chief, who is the head of the military department in the Mughal emperor, he has all the powers over his department, and sometimes it were extended to the other departments also. And he kept all the records of appointments into the military department, promotions, demotions, and granting of leaves, and any advances made to them. And in those days, not only in cash, the grants or the salaries were paid in the form of grants, like granting of land, and then they get the power to collect the taxes. So that lands are known as the Jagirs. And in the battlefield, this military advisor, he acted as a military advisor to the emperor. The next comes to the Sadar. He was the head of the religious department. He was a guardian of Islamic law. and the spokesperson of ulema, and used to supervise the working of educational institutions, distribution of charities, land grants, and also supervision of the judicial department. So the other important official under the Mughal administration comes the Sadr, who is the head of the religious department, and he is called as the guardian of Islamic law and spokesperson of ulema. Ulema are a group of qazis, or the religious priests who give advice to the king in the matters of administration or the religious activities. And this other is the spokesperson of that all ulema, and he also used to supervise the king in the working of the educational institutions like the madrasas or distribution of charities or the land grants to the religious things and supervision of the judicial department. He was also responsible for the institution of scholarships to the deserving students and appointment of judges. Apart from the Prime Minister and the Diwan, there were several other ministers or in charges of various departments. Among the important ones are the Imperial Household Department under Khan Saman, High Steward, the Military Pay and Accounts Department under the Imperial Bakshi, the Canon Law, both civil and military under the Chief Qazi, religious endowments and charity under the Chief Sadar, censorship of public morals under the Mahatasib, Justice Department, the Artillery Department, Daroga Khana, Intelligence and the Postal Department. So these were the other departments mentioned in the Mughal administration. Now we'll see how the judicial administration was carried out in the Mughal administration. So the judicial system evolved during the Mughal period rested on the belief that provincial justice to the people was a primary duty of the monarch. A justice was based on the Islamic law, that is Sharia. So the king gives his justice or based on the Islamic law, that is Sharia. The Emperor's court was the highest court in the empire, and he tried both civil and criminal cases, and was the final court of appeal in the empire. In the administration of justice, the king was assisted by a few advisors. So the organization and administration of law courts called Adalat was more or less on the lines of administrative structure, Paraganas, Sarkar, Subhas, and Emperor's court. So how we have this today's judicial setup like the Supreme Court or the High Court or district courts or the subordinate courts, in the same way we have the judicial system under the Mughals like the Adalat, or we have the other courts for the Paraganas, Sarkars, Subhas, and the Emperor's court also. And the Qazi was the judicial officer of the lowest court at the Paragana level, who was appointed by the royal sign, and his jurisdiction extended over the entire Paragana. At the provincial level, Qazi Sarkar was the chief justice, and it was a high court. It was a court appeal for Paraganas. At the provincial level, there are 4 different courts. The head of judiciary at the provincial level was Qazi Zuba, or chief provincial judge. He was a civil and criminal judician. He was also the chief court of appeal in the province. There were also separate courts for revenue in those days. And then provincial administration, we'll see how the provinces or the kingdom is divided under the Mughal administration. The provincial administration setup was almost a replica of the central administrative structure. So the empire was divided into number of subas or provinces or the states. So how our country is divided into states, and in turn the states are divided into districts and then villages. In the same way, in the Mughal administration, we have the empire Mughal administration was divided into subas, that are the provinces or the states, and these subas are again divided into provinces, paraganas. Now we'll see how these subedas were administered. So the subas or the subedar, the head of the province or the head of the province is called the subedar and was responsible for the provincial administration. And next to him in the hierarchy was the Diwan. The Diwan was entrusted with the responsibility of revenue, civil affairs, justice, general supervision over the office of the Sadar. The Subedar was endowed with executive powers, and powers were functional heads include the Bakshi, the Sadar, the Mirat, the Kotwal, the Mir Bahar, and the Waghi Navi, the official recorder. The provincial subedars were appointed through imperial firman, that is the king's orders. The other officials were appointed by the respective supervisors in charge of the department at the center. So the provincial divan, the second officer in the hierarchy was the provincial administrative structure was the divan. He was not necessarily subordinate to the subedar, but an officer of equal status. The role of the divan was to collect revenue, educate land disputes, and initiate administrative measures to increase and improve cultivation. The differences between the subedar and divan were over administrative matters were referred to the higher authorities in the order. He was assisted by 4 officials appointed by central government, who included a secretary called Pashkar, office superintendent called Daroga, head clerk called Munsif, and treasurer called Tahsildar. And Bakshi, mostly a revenue officer. The administration of vast army plus the management of Mansabdari system increased the importance of office of Mir Bakshi at the center. The functioning of Mansabdars and the army in different parts of the empire necessitated the posting of deputies to the Mir Bakshi at the provinces for liaison with the central government. The duties of the Bakshi include recruitment of soldiers, maintenance of troops, holding test operations, enforcing discipline among the defense personnel, inspection of animals belonging to the army, arranging payment of salaries to the soldiers and mansabdars. The Mir Bakshi was at the center, played an important role in the appointment of Bakshis of provinces. The Bakshis were entrusted with the responsibility of intelligence activities. With the help of agents, they used to send them to the Mir Bakshi on the activities of the various dignitaries and the public, who would in turn report the essence of information to the emperor. Then government at sarkars and below. So the provinces were divided into sarkars, which were further divided into paraganas, and there was no fixed number of sarkars and paraganas as delimitation of areas was frequent. So as we said, the Mughal Empire was divided into subas, that is the states. Again, these subas were divided into sarkars, and then this again is divided into paraganas. And there was no fixed number of sarkars or paraganas as how we have in the present day administration. And the sarkars and paraganas were neither completely military or not revenue divisions. Both of these subjects were combined in the administrative duties and responsibilities of the officers. The important officials at the sarkar level include the Faujdar, Amil, Kotwal, and Khazi. So next, the officer at the sarkar was the Faujdar, and then Amil or the Amilgar, he was in charge of the entire revenue department and functioned under the direct supervision and control of the provincial divan. And the other important of the function of the sarkar besides the Faujdar and the Amil were the Kotwal and Khazi. The Kotwal is like the present commissioner of the city. So the Kotwal, he is a chief administrator of town. He was a police officer of the town and also enjoyed the magisterial powers. He was responsible for maintenance of law and order, in charge of weights and measures, and regulating markets. And next important official was the Qazi, the judge. The principal duty of the Qazi was administration of justice. The funds earmarked for religious purposes and the department of clothing for the poor was also kept in his charge. And then the Paragana, that is the village, you can say, a group of villages, or the now today's like a block or mandal. So the Paragana, a group of villages combined into a unit, was called Paragana. It is the nearest word to prescribe Paragana. The administrative setup of the Paragana consisted of the important officials, the executive head Shigdar, the head of the revenue Amil, and Kwamango. And next comes the Shigdar. The Shigdar combined in himself the functions performed by the Faujdar and Kotwal at the sarkar level. So how we have the Kotwal, the commissioner, and the Faujdar, the military officer at the sarkar level. So at the Paragana level, we have the Shigdar, that is like a police officer, and he is in charge of law and order as well as the criminal justice. And there was a Qazi, also another important official associated with the administration of justice at the Paragana level. He performed the same function as the Qazi of Suba. And then village administration. So the headman of the village panchayat exercised general supervision, settled disputes, performed Police function and collected revenue. The Patwari, a village accountant, used to maintain the records of the cultivators and the types of crops sown, and these registers or records maintained by village headmen were considered accurate. And the Mansabdari system. The most important feature of the Mughal administration was the Mansabdari system. The major innovation of Akbar was that he recognized the entire bureaucracy, whether military or civil, on a different form known as the Mansabdari system. The term Mansab literally means the position, status of rank, but in the context of structure of Mughal administration, it indicated that the rank of Mansabdar, the holder of Mansab, the official hierarchy. There were 33 grades in this nature. Their holding of horses ranged from 10 to 10,000. Mansabdar's salary and allowances were fixed on the basis of their grade in the emperors. The Mansabdars were transferred from the civil administration to the military department and vice versa in the state. So this was about the Mughal administration, and some of the Mughal administrations or the legacy of the Mughal administration was still carried out in our day-to-day, in present-day administrations, and we can have this still in our villages. Many of the terms like the Kotwal, the Mansabdar, the Patwari, we often hear these kinds of terminology in our administration system. Now we'll move on to when you come to the modern era under the British rule, so the administrative features or the features of administration under the Britishers. So by the advent of the British rule, the administrative system in India was paternalized, centralized, and personalized. So as we know, the administration was in the hands of the crown after from the East India Company to enter into the British India. So the British Crown granted a group of merchants a monopoly over trade in the eastern waters. The East India Company was a body of merchant adventurers. They arrived in India, and the company chiefly remained a trading corporation until 1765. So after the decline of Mughal Empire, the trading component of the company was supplemented by territorial dominion. So first, the Britishers entered into the Indian territory during the reign of Mughal administration, and as the Mughal administration was declined, the Britishers slowly came to the power, and they occupied the whole of India. And by the 1773 Act, the crown took the hands of the took the administration into her and started administration. And we'll see how the features of the administration under the Britishers. First, the centralized administration. The British maintained a highly centralized structure up to the middle of 1930s. They developed an administrative structure primarily intended to support the goal of centralization. The first signs of centralization of administration were witnessed in the Regulation Act of 1773, which restricted the powers of the presidencies. The presidencies were brought under the administrative control and of the Governor General in Council. The Pitt India Act of 1784 paved the way for further centralization, by which matters relating to India were placed under the direct control of the British government by establishing a board of control. Second, the institution of Secretary of State. After the First War of Independence, that is the 1757 revolt, the Crown had taken the administration of Government of India from East India Company. A new office as the Secretary of State of India were placed under the direct control of the British government by establishing a board of control. Now we'll see how the provincial government was administered during the Britishers. The central government enjoyed all pervasive authority, and provincial governments were considered as adjuncts to the central government with little or no say in policy matters. The Act of 1919 had divided the subject between the provincial and the central governments. Some autonomy was given to the provinces to manage their affairs. The Act of 1935 brought further decentralization of administration. According to this act, the provinces were given more autonomy compared to 1919 position. The Act of 1935 had two important aspects. Firstly, it gave the provinces an exclusive authority in the specific areas, and they were relatively free from central control. Secondly, there was evidence of keenness on the part of the colonial government to introduce responsible government at the level of the provinces. Even we can see in our Constitution of India, so most of the features of the Constitution of India resemble the act of or taken from the Act of 1935. That is, it introduced a system of diarchy, the two governments at the state and the central level. Now we'll see the elaborate state structure. So the country was divided into provinces, and the provinces, or we can say the states, the present day states, and the states or the provinces are divided into districts, and then the districts were divided into taluks. So further, the districts were grouped into form divisions. The towns had their municipalities. The Indian government inherited the same system after independence. So today also we have our administration. The country is divided into states, and the states were divided into districts, and then the blocks of the mandals, and then the villages. And at the local governance, we have the municipalities for the urban areas, and for the Panchayati Raj institutions for the rural areas. So it was almost similar to the administrative setup of the British administration. And the rule of law. It is another characteristic feature of a British administration was the introduction of the rule of law. The spread of liberal ideas and institutions in the 19th and the 20th centuries across the world prompted the British to introduce the rule of law. The rule of law is based on the principle that all are equal before law. So, all are equal, irrespective of the caste, creed, religion, place of birth, gender. All are equal in the eyes of the law. So these characteristic feature is borrowed from the British administration. The rule of law is based on the principle that all are equal before law. British codified laws. The laws formulated were meant primarily to guard the government for misuse of its power, and the district as a unit of administration. So Britishers divided the provinces into several districts. Districts were made an important unit in the administration to bring the government closer to the people for maintaining peace, collecting revenue, and administering justice. And the other important feature of the British administration, which we follow till now, is the institution of district collector. The collector headed the district. The institution of district collector was created in 1772 on the recommendations of Warren Hastings. He was the most powerful official under whom all the departments were placed. The institution's main functions included maintenance of law and order, collection of revenue. The collection was regarded as the principal agent of the government, chief of police and head of magistracy at the district level. The office of the collector is still continuing to play a pivotal role in the district administration. So, the important official under the British administration was a district collector. His functions include the maintenance of law and order and collection of revenue. And he is a principal agent of government and chief of police and head of the magistracy at the district level. Local government. So, Lord Ripon, one of the viceroys of India, authored a resolution in 1882. This resolution was to a large extent responsible for the origin of local self-government institutions in India. The resolution recommended for the establishment of a network of social local self-government institutions to administer rural areas. These institutions provided an opportunity to local people to participate in administration and resolve local problems. So these bodies were utilized as a training ground for democracy. So for the more development of the local areas, or for the people to participate in the administration, the system of local governments was introduced, and it was introduced by Lord Ripon, who is also called as the father of local government in India. And next important feature of the British administration was the civil services. The need for organized civil services was felt by the East India Company to protect its interest and to increase its revenues. The Indian civil service was created for the purpose of achieving efficiency in administration. This service was considered as highly trained professional civil service. The members of this service constituted the essence of British power in India. Recruitment to this service was made by open competitive examinations. The Federal Public Service Commission was made in 1926 to conduct competitive examinations for the appointment of this services. Thus, the Mughal and Britishers have made efforts for orderly administration. The Mughal rule was considered as a trendsetter of administrative centralization, with the emperor acting as the chief of the governmental authority. Compared to ancient Indian administration, the Mughal system has highly centralized and provincial administration too. So, in the British administration, the Britishers made elaborate arrangements for their control over India and politically subjugated and economically exploited for 200 years. These exploitation of Britishers led to waging organized struggles against their rule, which culminated in achieving freedom to India on 15th August 1947 from the clutches of the Britishers. The independent India, to fulfill the aspirations of the millions of the people of the country, who were the poor and the poverty-stricken, made efforts to plan for its prosperity. So, most of the administration or the structures or the features of our Indian administration, the present today day-to-day administration has a um, has a resemblance of from the Gupta Empire or the Mughal Empire, Mauryan Empire, and to a large extent we have the from the British administration. So this was about the evolution of Indian administration. So how administration evolved in India and Indian land from the ancient ages, right from the Vedic times, from the ancient period that is during the Mauryas and the Guptas, and when it comes to the medieval period, how the administration was carried out in the Mughal administration in the Mughal Empire, and then when it comes to the modern era, how the British administration was carried out in India, and what was the legacy which is carried out till today in British administration, we'll see now. So how we are going to our administration was carried out till now, and what were the changes we made, and uh, what were the changes we made within the British administration in the present day administration. We'll see now, and what was the continuity and change. So, administration of independent India contains the impact and influence of British administration. The legacy of British rule is natural and obvious, and what were the challenges to the Indian administration after the independence, and what were the legacy of the British administration still carried out in Indian administration. We'll see in this current topic. Now we'll see immediately after the independence, India faced the problem of the partition. So India and Pakistan partition in 1947, and after as soon as the partition of the partition with the Pakistan, and after the independence from Britishers, there were the major challenges had to be faced by the Indian administration. The first challenges were from the after the by the partition of the refugees. So millions of refugees came to India, and administering them, providing the rehabilitation, etc., was a major challenge to the India. And the second thing was a shortage in the civil servants. So during the Britishers' time, most of the civil servants were of the from the British administration or the Britishers. And after, as soon as we got independence, these Britishers who are from the civil British, they were returned back to the Britain, and the only few Indian civil servants were left in the Indian administration. So there was a shortage in the strength of the Indian civil service, and the famines in the 40s, the famines in the 1940s has also resulted in the loss of a shortage in the supply of food grains, which coupled with the price rise brought in undue pressure on the administration to manage the prices, and rationing was introduced to regulate supply and distribution of food grains, and it added another burden to already pressurized administrative system. The additional work resulted from the introduction of rationing necessitated urgent and large-scale recruitment to various positions of public personnel. When the Britishers left the country, the entire country automatically became a part of Indian Union, but the territories and the other important task or the challenge before the Indian administration was the unification of Indian Union. There were more than 500, or you can say the 600 of the princely states, and the unification of these princely states into the independent, into the common united India was a big major challenge in front of the Indian administration, and the administrative system became engaged in the very task of integrating of these princely states. Thus, the administrative system had passed through a testing time after independence. It faced several challenges and crisis situations. It had to work as a stabilizing force to withstand only the stress. Yeah, this was a challenges before Indian independence, after independence. So the administrative system had to pass through a testing time after independence. It faced several challenges and crisis situations. It had to work as a stabilizing force to withstand not only the stress and strain caused by partition. Now we'll see what is the legacy of the British rule in the Indian administration, which was carried out in India. So the present Indian administrative structure is largely a legacy of British rule. So pre-India inherited governmental machinery as developed by the British with the feel of significance according to having a federal government, all India services, civil services recruitment, administrative training, the secretariat system, office procedures, district administration, revenue administration, police system, law and order, budgeting, accounting, auditing, and a number of other structural and functional areas of Indian administration have their roots in the British administration. Now we'll see what are the legacy or the features, the continuing features of the British administration in Indian administration till now, or still. First, the department organizations have been playing a dominant role in the Indian administrative system. The internal organization of the departments and the working procedures has not changed much. Hierarchy, written reports, and the communication have continued. Pre-independence manuals still govern the department. The position of chief secretary in the state administration continues even till today. So the departmental organizations, how the government or the Indian administration, how the central government is divided into different departments, and how the different departments are governed or administered by the chief secretaries was the legacy of the British rule, and it was still continued till today. And next come the public services. So one of the features of the British administration was the public services, which has continued till now. So one of the important legacies of the British rule in India was the creation of Indian civil services. The nomenclature of the service was changed to Indian Administrative Service after the independence. So before independence, we had two types of officers, that is the civil servants from the British and from the Indian civil servants. So the Indian civil servants were called the ICS officers, and after Indian independence, these nomenclature was changed. That is, Indian civil services was changed into Indian Administrative Service, and it is worked as a steel frame to the administrative machinery, the organizational structure, administrative setup, functioning, and ethos were influenced not only the government functioning but also the administrative culture. Several strategic positions in both central and state administrations are being held by the IAS cadre. And next important feature, which is carried on by from the British administration, was the Public Service Commission. And the substantial contribution of the British was that the competitive examinations were conducted by an independent agency. The idea of merit-based civil service germinated on the Indian soil for the first time with the submission of the Macular Report in 1954. To ensure impartial selection of meritorious civil servants, the Federal Public Service Commission was established in 1926. Later on, it was replaced by the UPSC, that is Union Public Service Commission, for the recruitment of the all India services. And next, the district administration. This was one of the important feature or the noticeable features of the British administration, which is carried on till today. District is still continuing as a unit of administration with noticeable increase in its importance. The head of the district administration continues to be the collector. The scale of operations in the district has more than doubled. The collector still enjoys the powers and status and high used during the British rule. So apart from the regulatory functions like the maintenance of law and order and revenue collection, the collectors are entrusted with the developmental functions for the development and the growth of respective districts. So during the British reign, the British administration, the role of the collector was to maintenance law and order and collection of revenue and the magisterial work. But in today, the collectors are engaged in the developmental activities also. Local government. So local government is another feature of the British administrative system that is being continued. Lord Ripon, who has introduced local self-government in India, has been called the father of local self-government. Local government institutions which existed before independence were consolidated and new ones were created to meet the growing needs of the people. So we have for the urban areas, we have the municipalities, and for the villages or the rural areas, we have the panchayats in the rural areas. And then the financial administration, the British administration created institutions like Comptroller and Auditor General, Public Accounts Committee, Reserve Bank, and a budget system for having a sound financial administration in government. These institutions are still playing a key role in government to ensure financial prudence and accountability. Now we'll see what are the changes in administration. So what are the major changes which brought about by the Indian administration after the independence, or what they made to the already existing features of the which are carried on from the British administration. The first change which was brought in the Indian administration was in the development and the welfare. Under the British rule, the administration was motivated more in trade and commercial activities as they came for the trading as a traders to India. So the mostly concentrated in the trading and commercial activities, and for the purpose they introduced railways, post and telegraphs, ports and highways, banking and insurance areas, and they give priority to education for their official work, and health and medical facilities started at the elementary level. Fiscal incentives were provided for industrial development, especially after the World War 1914 to 1918. So, after independence, when India became free from a colonial rule, the Constitution of India was written for the newly independent country. It started a preamble. The preamble seeks to secure all citizens social, economic, and political justice, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and promote among them all fraternity, ensuring the worship, equality of status and opportunity, and promote among them all fraternity, ensuring the dignity of the individual and sovereignty and integrity of the nation. The state is to strive minimize the inequalities in income and eliminate inequalities in status, facilities, and opportunities to citizens. Both men and women will have equal right to an adequate means of livelihood. Equal pay for equal work is another directive to be adhered by the states. The moral, mental, physical, and psychological health of children and youth are to be protected. Equal justice and free legal aid, right to work, education, and public assistance in old age, unemployment, etc. is secured by those principles taken care of as a guiding points in the state policies. And next important feature in the present administration, which was changed after the British administration, was a popular participation administration. So the Panchayati Raj has been the most important change in the participation of the rural people in the rural development administration. Community development was the earlier phase of this popular participation. And then the Parliament passed the Right to Information Bill on the 11th May 2005, and it has came into effect from 12th October 2005, which gives the people the power to know the information of what are the things which are carried out in their area. And then electronic governance or the e-governance, we can get the government services through online or wherever in your nearby places. So with the help of the ICT, that is information community technologies. So ICT has been increasingly used to improve government services. This kind of technology application to public system management is called e-governance. It is a form of governance comprising the process and structures involved in the delivery of electronic services to the public. The aim ultimately simplify procedures, enable people's participation, and bring about improvement in governance through mail, telecommunication, and internet. Various manifestations of e-governance initiatives are using IT tools and applications such as computers, internet, and also information systems like GIS, MIS, and such others. The government of India has launched the National E-Governance Plan in May 2006. Under NEGP, numerous e-enabled initiatives have been undertaken by the various line departments like mission mode projects. So, ever since the country became independent, Indian administration has continued with the British legacy by having erstwhile departmental organizations, public services, public service commissions, institution of district collector, reserve bank, control and auditor general, and such other. Along with this, the country introduced changes in Indian administration with a focus on the citizens and pro-citizen services. Development and welfare become sine qua non with the democracy and participation, right to information, local self-governments, gender participation, citizen charters, social audit, ICT, and other measures are the traits of good governance that are today possible for the people of India. So till now, we have seen the evolution of Indian administration and how the administration has changed from the past to the present and what were the legacy of the British administration which was continued in today's administration, what are the changes made to the administration. Now we'll move on to the administrative structure or the administrative setup of the Indian administration. So the Indian administration or the administration or the central government or the government has three organs, as you know, that is the executive, legislative, and the judiciary. And when you come from when you go for the union executive, under union executive you have the president, the prime minister, and the council of ministers, and how these three will administer the entire or rule the entire country. We'll see what are the important, what are the powers and functions of the president now. And under union executive, we have the president, the prime minister, and the council of ministers. So Article 52 to 78 in Part 5 of the Constitution deal with the Union Executive. The Union Executive consists of the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General of India. The President is the head of the Indian state. He is the first citizen of India and acts as a symbol of unity, integrity, and solidity of the nation. And how the President is elected. The President is elected not directly by the people, but by members of electoral college consisting of the parliament. That is, the president is elected indirectly by the people of India through their representatives. So the elected members of both the houses of parliament, that is the MPs, the MLAs, and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the UT, all these people will elect the people, will elect the president. So the elected members of both the house of the people, that is the MPs of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, the elected members of the legislative assemblies of all the states, that is the MLAs of all the states, and the MLAs of the union territories of Delhi and Puducherry. These people elect the president. And what are the qualifications required for the president of India? A person to be eligible for election as a president should fulfill the following qualifications. First, he should be a citizen of India. He should have completed 35 years of age. He should be qualified for election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should not hold any office of profit under the union government or any state government or any local authority or any other public authority. A sitting president or vice president of the union or the governor of any state and the minister of the union or any state is not deemed to hold any office of profit and hence qualified as a presidential candidate. The president hold office for a term of 5 years from the date on which he enters upon his office. And so these are the qualifications of the president. First, the person should be a citizen of India. He should have completed a 35 years of age and he should be qualified for election as a member of Lok Sabha, that is MP of a Lok Sabha. And he should not hold any office of profit under the union government or any state government or any local authority or any other public authority. And we'll see what are the powers and the functions of the President of India. The powers enjoyed and the functions performed by the President can be studied under the following heads. First, executive powers. They are divided under the different heads known as the executive powers, legislative powers, financial powers, judicial powers, diplomatic powers, military powers, and emergency powers. Now we'll see what are the executive powers of the President. The executive powers and functions of the President are all the executive actions of the Government of India are formally taken in his name. He can make rules specifying the manner in which the orders and other instruments are made and executed in his name shall be authenticated. He can make rules for more convenient transaction of business of the union government and for allocation of state business among the ministers. He appoints the Prime Minister and other ministers. They hold office during his pleasure. He appoints the Attorney General of India and determines his remuneration. The Attorney General hold office during the pleasure of the President. That is under the executive power, the President makes all the appointments for the important positions in the government of India. That is for the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General, the even CAG, and other important officials under the government of India. And what are the legislative powers of the President of India? The President is an integral part of the Parliament of India and enjoys the following legislative powers. When you say the Parliament does not consist of only the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. It also includes President. So the Parliament consists of the President, Lok Sabha, and Rajya Sabha. As an integral part of the Parliament, the President enjoys some legislative powers. So the following are the legislative powers of the President. They are, he can summon or prorogue the Parliament and dissolve the Lok Sabha. He can also summon a joint sitting of both the House of Parliament, which is presided over by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. So when there is a deadlock on the same issue between both the House of the Parliament, then he can ask for the joint sitting of both the House of the Parliament, and that is presided over by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. He can address the Parliament at the commencement of the first session of after each general election and first session of each year. So after the general elections, he begins the first session of the Parliament, and every year he begins the first session of the Parliament. He can send messages to the House of Parliament, whether with respect to a bill pending in the Parliament or otherwise. He can appoint any member of the Lok Sabha to preside over its proceedings. When the office of both the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker fall vacant, similarly, he can also appoint any member of the Speaker fall vacant. Similarly, he can also appoint any member of the Speaker, member of the Rajya Sabha, to preside over its proceedings when the office of both the Chairman and the Deputy Chairman fall vacant. He nominates 12 members of the Rajya Sabha from among persons having special knowledge or practical experience in literature, science, art, and social service. Under the financial powers of the President, all the money bills can be introduced in Parliament only with his prior recommendation. All the money bills, or you can say the budget session begins, the money bills were introduced with the recommendation or the permission of the President only. He causes to be laid before the Parliament the annual financial statement, that is the Union budget. The President gives permission uh, lay the budget and union budget in the Parliament, to introduce the union budget in the Parliament. No demand for a grant can be made except on his recommendation. So any grants, any demand for grant can be made only after the permission of the President. He can make advances out of the contingency fund of India to meet any unforeseen expenditure. To make any grants from the contingency of fund of India, that is, which is meant only for the purpose in the used in the emergency services, that grants are made only after the permission of the authentication of the President only. He constitutes a finance commission after every 5 years to recommend the distribution of revenues between the center and the states. Judicial powers. The judicial powers and functions of the President are: he appoints the Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts. He can seek advice from the Supreme Court on any question of law or fact. However, the advice of the tendered by the Supreme Court is not binding on the President. He can grant pardon, reprieve, respite, and remission of punishment, or suspend, remit, or commute the sentence of any person convicted of any offense. So, in all cases where the punishment or sentence is by a court martial, in all cases where the punishment or sentence is for an offense against the Union law, and in all cases where the sentence is a sentence of death. And under diplomatic powers, the international treaties and agreements are negotiated and concluded on behalf of the President. So they are, whenever the new diplomat comes from the India, they are received, or the high commissions are received by the President. They are subject to the approval of the Parliament. He represents India in international forums and affairs and sends receipts diplomats like ambassadors, high commissioners, and so on. Under the military powers, he is the supreme commander of the Defense Force of India. In that capacity, he appoints the chiefs of the army, the navy, the air force. He can declare war or conclude peace subject to the approval of the Parliament. And there are some emergency powers for the President of India. In addition to the normal powers, the Constitution confers extraordinary powers on the President to deal with the following three types of emergencies. That is the national emergency under Article 352, President's rule under Article 356 or 365, and the financial emergency under Article 360. So during the national emergency of India, that is the three kind of emergencies we have: the constitutional emergency, the President rule, or the financial emergency. In these three emergencies, the powers are vested in the President has extraordinary powers in his hands. And next comes the Prime Minister under the Union Executive. After the President, we have the next dignitary is the Prime Minister. So, in the scheme of parliamentary system of government provided by the Constitution, the President is a nominal executive authority, and the Prime Minister is a real executive. As we all know, the President he has only the nominal executive or de jure executive, where the Prime Minister, who holds all the powers in his hands, is called the real executive or the de facto executive. In other words, President is the head of the state, while the Prime Minister is head of the government. We'll see what are the powers and functions of the Prime Minister. The powers and functions of the Prime Minister can be studied under the following heads. First, in relation to the Council of Ministers, as he is the head of the Council of Ministers or leader of the floor of the House, in relation to the Council of Ministers, the Prime Minister enjoys the following powers as the head of the Union Council of Ministers. He recommends persons who can be appointed as ministers by the President. The President can appoint only those persons as ministers who are recommended by the Prime Ministers. He allocates and reshuffles various portfolios among the ministers. He can ask a minister to resign or advise the President to dismiss him in case of difference of opinion. He presides over the meeting of Council of Ministers and influences its decisions. He guides, directs, controls, and coordinates the activities of all the ministers. He brings about the collapse of the Council of Ministers by resigning from office. Since the Prime Minister stands at the head of the Council of Ministers, the other ministers cannot function when the Prime Minister resigns or dies. In other words, the resignation or death of an incumbent Prime Minister automatically dissolves the Council of Ministers and thereby generates a vacuum. The resignation or death of any other minister, on the other hand, merely creates a vacancy which the Prime Minister may or not likely to fill. In relation to the President, the Prime Minister enjoys the following powers in relation to the President. He is the principal channel of communication between the President and the Council of Ministers. It is a duty of Prime Minister to communicate to the President and the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union and the proposals of legislation. To furnish such information relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union, the proposals for legislation as the President may call for. And if the President so requires to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the Council, he advises the President with regard to the appointment of important officials like Attorney General of UPSC, Election Commission of India, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Chairman and members of the Commissioners, Chairman and members of the Finance Commission, and so on. Now, the powers of the Prime Minister in relation to the Parliament. The Prime Minister is the leader of the lower house, that is Lok Sabha. In this capacity, he enjoys the following powers. He advises the President regard to summoning and proroguing of the sessions of the Parliament. He can recommend dissolution of the Lok Sabha to President at any time. He announces government policies on the floor of the House. Other powers and functions. In addition to the above mentioned three major roles, the Prime Minister has various other roles. These are: he is the chairman of the Planning Commission. Now it is replaced by Niti Aayog, National Development Council, National Integration Council, Interstate Council, and National Water Council. He plays a significant role in shaping the foreign policy of the country. He is a chief spokesperson of the Union government. So whatever the central government takes a decision, he will be the chief spokesperson. Means he conveys to the messages of the cabinet to the people. He is a crisis manager in chief at the political level during the emergencies. As we can see during the time of this pandemic issue or the COVID issue, how the Prime Minister is handling the issues. So he is the crisis manager in chief at the political level during emergencies. As leader of the nation, he meets various sections of the people in different states and receives memoranda from them regarding their problems and so on. He is the leader of party in power. He is the political head of the services. And the relationship with the President. So we'll see what are the relationship of a Prime Minister with the President. The following provisions of the Constitution deal with the relationship between the President and the Prime Minister. Article 74, there shall be a council of ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President, who shall, in exercise of his functions, act in accordance with such advice. However, the President may require the Council of Ministers to reconsider such advice, and the President shall, in accordance with the advice, tender such reconsideration. Article 75, Clause A. Under this, the President shall be appointed by the President. The Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President, and the other ministers shall be appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. The minister shall hold office during the pleasure of the President, and the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of the People. Article 78, it shall be the duty of the Prime Minister to communicate to the President all decisions of the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union and the proposal for legislation. To furnish such information relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union, the proposal for legislation as the President may call for, and if the President so requires, to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the Council. So these are the powers and functions of the Prime Minister, and we'll see who are the Council of Ministers and what is the composition and what is the role in relation to the President or the Prime Minister. Now, the composition of Council of Ministers, as we have said earlier, that the Union Executive consists of the President, the Prime Minister, and the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers consists of three categories of ministers, namely the Cabinet Ministers, Ministers of State, and Deputy Ministers. The difference between them lies in their respective ranks, emoluments, and political importance. And what are the nature and advice by ministers? Article 74 provides a Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister at the head. to aid and advise the president in the exercise of his functions. So these council of ministers are meant to help and advise the president and the prime minister under Article 74. The 42nd and 44th Constitutional Amendment Acts have made the advice tendered by ministers to the president cannot be inquired by any court. This provision emphasizes the intimate and the confidential relationship between the president and the ministers. And how the ministers are appointed? Appointment of ministers. The prime minister is appointed by the president, while other ministers are appointed by the president on the advice of the prime minister. This means that the president can appoint only those persons as ministers who are recommended by the prime ministers. In the appointment of the council of ministers or the ministers, the prime minister chooses his close aides and advises the president to appoint them as a ministers. And what are the responsibilities of the ministers? The first one is the collective responsibility. The fundamental principle underlying the working of parliamentary system of government is the principle of collective responsibility. That is, all are responsible for any act done by any ministry. That is, women sing together. Article 75 clearly states that the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. The principle of collective responsibility also means that the cabinet decisions bind all cabinet ministers and other ministers, even if they differed in the cabinet meeting. Individual responsibility. Article 75 also contains the principle of individual responsibility. It states the ministers hold office during the pleasure of the president, which means that the president can remove a minister even at time when the Council of Ministers enjoys the conference of Lok Sabha. So this is about the Union Executive, that is the Prime Minister, the President, the Prime Minister, and the Council of Ministers. Hope you are clearly understood today's topic. Thank you all.
Hello,
Hello.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Can you give some important questions from the second semester?
From the second semester.
Oh, yes, ma'am. First year, second sem. Cause we didn't attend to the classes during the COVID.
Just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Bindu, you have asked about the important questions for the second sem.
Yes, ma'am.
So in the next class, mostly of in the next week, I'll try to provide you. And
Okay, ma'am.
yeah, any other questions? And student special, I just want to tell you during the presentations or during the lecture, we can't see the chats or the seeing the chats and Excel. We have hardly given 1 hour time, and in that 1 hour time, we are supposed to complete the syllabus and regarding the doubts. And I don't know who asked it between the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. That is a minimum basic knowledge one should have being in public administration students in the second year.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Somebody has given the yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Someone mentioned the answer.
Yeah, so in the chat box you have the number, so you can ask the concerned person, the professor, Venkatesh sir. He has given, please all the students note down his number for any queries regarding the second semester questions or
Yes,
uh,
ma'am.
any other queries. Any other doubts, students?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, Sharath,
Nothing.
you're not audible properly. That is a
Excuse me, ma'am.
evaluation of unit. Yes, something.
Yes, ma'am. Can we got your personal number to ask any questions about the subject?
No, you have the one number of the professor in our chat box, so you can ask him for any other queries regarding the subject.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Okay, students, I hope you understood the Union Executive and the evolution of Indian administration right from the ancient to the modern era and the President, Prime Minister, and the Council of Ministers.
Yes, madam. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you for your patience and thank you, students.
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you
Thank
a
you,
lot,
ma'am.
madam. Thank you, madam.